unicorns are going to be all over the place, and you don't really know what they're going to do.
We revealed some of our picks, but it was not all of them.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Shaco is locked in.
We share a lot of common picks, so we might fight over those.
Fox just goes wild, and they manage to get a triple.
The people that say we only have one strategy and one playstyle are the type of people who are always looking for something to moan about and point out.
SK champion pool is pretty deep as well, so we definitely need to be careful with them.
Me, myself, I'm not afraid of pulling out anything.
I think they will be surprised. Like, I might bring out some new picks as well.
We want to win as much as we can and win as hard as we can.
Finishing first would be really great for us.
We are like one of the 3 teams that beat them, so I think we can really do it and we can go to the finals.
If we got number 1, this play would be really, really great.
Well, we just want to win the whole LCS.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the European League Championship Series Spring Semifinals, broadcasting to you live from Berlin, Germany. The stage is set here for our last best of 5 before we pick up shop and head to Spain. And just moments ago, we saw the fans getting underway outside, hyped for SK Gaming versus Unicorns of Love with their signs Unicorns of Love themselves. Starting in the building with their interesting picks in mind. I do hope we'll see a lot of that. And SK Gaming setting up on stage, making sure everything's working properly to get off those picks and win those games for them. And there, the fans in the stand can't wait to get the action underway. Hello, I'm Eve, your Shock supporter, and joining me on the analyst desk today is coach for the Copenhagen Wolves and wannabe medical professional Carl Dentis-Cray, as well as his partner in crime and coach for Gambit Gaming, Jordan Leviathan Thwaites. Very good to have you gentlemen here once again, Dentist, and joined by Leviathan as well. And with their win yesterday, Fnatic are the first team in the spring finals where they'll face the winner of today's best of 5 semi-final. H2K drops down to the 3rd, 4th place match. Well, they of course want to get 3rd when they play in Madrid next week. Let's talk about that game yesterday. Fnatic versus H2K. It went all the way to 5 games, and it was when they went away from the Lee Sin pick the most on Huni and went to that Vlad for me that the tide definitely turned.
Absolutely. What a crazy game series. 5 games, everything you could have asked for. It was just perfectly played out. The first game, it was kind of like going even up until the mid game, and then H2K just take it over. For me, surprising, because I expected Fnatic to go all the way to 3-0. But with that first win, I knew we got a series, and we got a series. Huni on Vladimir, amazing.
Yeah, one of the things that I am looking forward to see if H2K can fix in their 3rd place match is it seems like they lost their composure going into games 4 and 5. When you play a series, you need to be able to be ready to play all 5 games, and yeah, I'd like to see them be able to take the series the whole way next time.
Yeah, good point. You definitely saw them falling apart bit by bit in for game 4 and then in game 5. I'd like to talk to you guys about how you have to adapt to a series like that. What do you do as a coach as you're in picks and bans and one of your players' roles is entirely banned out and you're left guessing?
I think one of the things you need to have prepping in or going in is having a diverse champion pool. Normally you need 4 or 5, but if you expect to be targeted banned, sometimes you need to expand to 7 or 8. And if you're unable to do that and you notice both teams are banning out the same lane, maybe you hold back a couple of the bans because you're expecting them to cover the top lane bans as well. But you just need to be ready to play a diverse amount of champions if you're going to be the one that's targeted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yesterday we saw 6 top laners being taken out of the picture, and that kind of smolts down the pool of Huni. He was trying to make the Lee Sin work, didn't work, and then he still had the Vladimir to fall back. If they would have adapted a bit earlier and maybe didn't ban 3 top laners themselves, it would have been a better picture.
Yeah, we'll see what they come up with when they get to the finals. There's more on the line today than just a spot in the finals, though. The further a team goes in the playoffs, the more champion points they'll be managing to rack up, and the championship points will determine one Worlds qualifier from both EU and NA, and then the other 2 spots go to the winner of the summer split and the team who wins the regional qualifier tournament. So very important. Also that 3rd, 4th play match for H2K and whoever they end up playing. Now focusing on the present, today's match between SK Gaming and the Unicorns of Love will get underway shortly, but be sure to stay tuned after, because when things wrap up here in Berlin, North American LCS will pick up right off where we leave off for the last semi-final match between Solo Mid and Team Solo Mid and Team Impulse. And if it's anything like what we've seen yesterday between Cloud9 and Team Liquid, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, yesterday was crazy, but today 2 awesome games, one from Europe, one from America. And if you saw how Team Imports played, the curve was going straight up. And with Rush, one of the best junglers in the West, if you ask me, that's going to be a really interesting series.
Yeah, I can't predict the winner because TSM is TSM. They're one of the best. I think they're the best team in North America, but Impact, is playing extremely well. I think TIP has a legitimate chance of beating them, so I can't call it. Either team that wins won't be a surprise to me.
Yeah, let's hope for 5 games there and 5 games in this one as well, and then we're all set. But before we get to today's games, we want to check in with you guys. Tweet at LL Esports and tell us, what is your favorite pro champion combo used in a playoff so far and why? So which pro playing which champion, Dentist?
Yeah, for me, I got 2. I got to stick with my own series, so I'm going to go 1 for Copenhagen Wolves and 1 for HOK. First one, Youngbug on Hecarim. He wasn't known to be a carry player, but in that games, on that Hecarim, he was stepping up huge. He was trying his best to win the game, and I think he was amazing on the champion. And the second one, Ryu on Zed. As an LCK fan, you can't forget the Zed on Ryu.
Yeah, and mine is definitely Kikis on Shaco. I'm a Shaco main myself. I love the champion, and he played it pretty well. And one of the other things as well is his team really worked well with him. They knew exactly what they needed out of the Shaco. They played the split push correctly, and yeah, I just really enjoyed the game. Even if we were on the wrong side, I really enjoyed the game.
Yeah, I really stand up for you of giving some praise to that Shaco and that Kikis. And as always, be sure to tweet your answers at LL Esports using the hashtag LCS so we can talk over your responses with our analysts here later today, and I'm sure they'll have a thing or two to say. For now, though, it is time to dial in on the match at hand. The first seed, 15-3 SK Gaming versus the LCS own Cinderella story, the Unicorns of Love. Starting with the lineup for the SK Gaming as they are on the blue side for game 1 with Freddy122, Svenskar and Fox, Forgiven and Rated, and their coach Innerflame dominating the season so far, only dropping 3 games. And Freddy said in the intro, yeah, people want to pigeonhole us maybe and say we only have one style and maybe just people want to moan, but it's not to moan about. They just play the way they play just incredibly well. They're 1-3-1. They get Forgiven ahead. They get their objectives. It's not moaning. It's actually more praise coming from our side.
Yeah, and they obviously they played the 1-3-1 really well. It was unstoppable at the beginning of the season. They were just rolling over everyone. And then in their game against us, they pulled out a Katarina mid, very good in team fights, and they showed that they were able to play it well. I think had we been more prepared and more ready for the Katarina, it could have been a closer game. But it just showed that they're willing to pull out unpredictable picks. They're willing to play a different style other than 1-3-1, and they're successful with it so far.
Yeah, for me personally, it's not moaning, it's praising. If you got that one style and you just play it out that perfect, there's nothing much to add. Just roll with it. Yeah,
absolutely. If we dial in on a little bit of the individual players on that team, obviously we always talk about Forgiven. We talk about how solid Freddy is in that top lane. Maybe turning our attention to Fox. You mentioned Katarina. Fox is one of those players that you don't, it's not the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the strength of SK Gaming. He's kind of goes under the ropes but still gets the job done.
For me, Fox is one of the most underrated players in the whole split. He's the mid laner that has to work with the least resources out of almost everyone. He's going to sacrifice a lot of farm for the other lanes, especially for the AD carry, and he still makes it work. He single-handedly carried on so many games and on so many champions, especially his LeBlanc. That guy is just amazing, if you ask me.
Yeah, there isn't much else to say. He plays extremely well. He has a lot of limited resources, and he always shows up. He's a wonderful player.
Yeah, a lot of good things about that team, and they're going to have to pull out all the stops because they're up against the decidedly more magical Unicorns of Love today with Vizichachi, Kikis, Power of Evil, Vardax, Hylissang, and their coach Sheepy. They played you guys last week well, and they gave a masterclass in adapting to a best of 5. Honestly, gave you guys a run for your money, and yeah, just kudos to them because that's the thing we praised coming into them. They can play off meta picks as we are joined by a Unicorn himself, and they made it work.
Yeah, no, it's really difficult to play against Unicorns of Love because we spend the whole week scrimmaging against H2K, Copenhagen Wolves, and they play their champions, and we had a bit of success with the compositions we're running, but when they start playing things like Udyr and Shaco, you can just throw all the practice out the window. So if I was SK, I'd be a bit worried, We'll have to see if they're lactose intolerant or not.
Well, as we were joined by a Unicorn seemingly, tell me about what your vision on that series, especially Hylissang. He turned out to be our MVP, and I think he also lined out a lot of the pick and ban strategy for them because he was so good on Morgana.
My brain tells me SK, but my heart tells me the Unicorns. I just love that bunch of people. They're crazy with their picks, they're crazy with their players. They're a bunch of nice guys, and I'm all in for this. I want to see 5 games today, and I want to see the Unicorns passing by.
All right, well, we'll see how it turns out. How do you think Hylissang is going to do in this one? He never was the MVP in the weeks before, and then it seems like he's taking the pressure and going to a new level.
Hylissang, for me, was the MVP last week because he was just amazing on Thresh. He was supposed to be a one-trick pony on that champion, and then he showed up with a Morgana, just huge vision control, skill shots, just amazingly overall. And I don't think that SK is going to ban any one of those support champions, so he's going to get one of the 2, and then he's going to perform.
Yeah, and I think like watching the VOD review in preparation for the series, his Annie play just added an extra dimension to their win conditions. Like his Annie play itself was a win condition, so we had to remove that, and then we just lose to his Morgana. And when he steps up like this during the playoffs, it just really shows the type of player he is. This guy is clutch.
Yeah, and especially when you're mentioning the support player and you have to start out banning on his champions against a team like the Unicorns of Love, who obviously have bannable things in both the mid lane and the top lane and the jungle, although you can't really go for that. So what is your vision on like how the pick and bans will go? I would say that in a standard game, SK Gaming would almost always win against the Unicorns of Love, but it's going to be so important if they try and predict what they will pick or ban out. It's not the route to go for SK Gaming.
Yes. You can go ahead.
Yeah, two things you can do. Either you can ban the Shaco and the Udyr right away from the get-go in game 1 just to deny that, but I wouldn't do that myself because there's a lot of other Gouda prepared. So if you ban those two, he's coming up with something crazy, Vega jungle or something like that. So you can't really ban them out. The picks and bans in this game, if you're SK, it's going to be tough. You can take out the Shaco, you can take out the Syndra maybe for Power of Evil, but you can also just ban out one lane or just ban meta picks. I don't know. Like if I would be the coach, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I really have no idea what the ban either. Like, I think the Annie ban is good, but then he's shown that he's able to play other supports. I think you just go in, maybe try to find a strategy that you want to play. If you're SK, find the champions that you like, the composition that you want to play, and then ban the champions that are problematic to that strategy. And then, obviously, from going from game 1, you can see what they want to do and then adjust accordingly. And then if you're on UOL side, I would try to put Forgiven onto Caitlyn, ban maybe 2 or 3 AD carries to put them on Caitlyn, and then find the champions in your pool that are strong against Caitlyn, because he's shown a liking to that champion. He likes to pick it when the enemy takes Annie, and maybe you can find a way to put him on Caitlyn, take Annie, and then just have a composition that's really strong against Caitlyn.
All right, something else we can look at is picks, Kikis. We've mentioned it, of course, before already. He's going to be crazy. He can pull out anything and that jungle. He's actually part of our featured matchup. We have Kikis versus Svenskar, and I think because Kikis is always coming out with those crazy picks and then carrying or influencing the game in some way. But Svenskar, what a fantastic jungler also, who also kind of flies under the radar but gets the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for a year, he's been one of the best junglers, if not the best jungler in the West, especially in Europe. And that guy just screams early game aggression all over the place. He's highly mechanical skilled. He's all over the place, going into the enemy's jungle, just hunting for his prey, and he's just stacking it up. KDA. Everything. He's a monster. He's my player to watch for.
All right.
Yeah, and definitely Kikis. The guy is diverse. Obviously, he's shown he can play Udyr, he can play Shaco. I have no idea what this guy is going to play. He's going to be flexible. If the team wants to play a different style of strategy, like a different win condition that isn't in the meta, this guy can bend over backwards to make it happen. So we're going to definitely keep a close eye on what he's picking today.
All right, foregoing maybe picks and bans and the crazy things, is maybe SK Gaming so strong in what they do and the way they play the game that in the end it doesn't matter what the Unicorns of Love pick?
No, I don't think that. I don't think that at all. Like, Unicorns is a team that can adapt in the series. We saw that against Gambit. And Unicorns also a team that's going to come up with some crazy stuff. And if you're SK and just playing your game down, you can definitely throw them over. And if not Unicorns, who else?
Yeah, and having experience playing against Unicorns, they make you play your style. Like, we had compositions, we wanted to play them a certain way. They didn't care. They forced skirmishes. We had to skirmish with them. And if they're able to, find through their studies and exploit in SK's gaming style, I'm sure that they'll be successful. It's either going to be SK playing their strategy and making it happen, or UOL is going to find that cheese pick, that cheese composition, and they're going to make SK play their style.
Mm-hmm. What about the mental aspect of coming into this game? Obviously, the Unicorns of Love, they're riled in a little bit in the playoffs. They played that quarterfinal. They went all the way to 4 games, and they made that work. SK Gaming, they've had 2 weeks to kind of scope everything out. So how will that have influenced both teams?
I don't think that it will influence them at all. Like, just by talking to the Unicorns, they're just all calm, relaxed guys. And they are realistic about what their chances are today. They are prepared. They have a lot of self-esteem, and they're going to try to make it work. I don't think that has any influence on it. If any, they have more practice because they practice against Gambit.
Yeah, no, I think the extra week of playing is going to be helpful. The edge SK has is they've been able to sit back and watch all of the regions. They've been able to see, TP Smite start to evolve. And when you're practicing for a quarterfinal match, the last couple days you can't really innovate. But I can assume that they've had enough time to practice, find the compositions they want, and they could pull out some crazy stuff here.
Yeah, pull out some crazy stuff as well. Let's hope so. Before we head to the caster desk for picks and bans, we're going to hop on stage where Pyrotechnics is standing by to talk strategy with the minds behind these squads.
Thank you very much, Shocks. I am, of course, joined by the Unicorns of Love, Sheepy, and SK's Inner Flame. First of all, gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
It's good to be here too.
Thank you once again. So guys, I want to get right into this one. Sheepy, I feel like they said it best on the analyst desk. This is a Cinderella story of a team. You guys came up through the promotion tournament, and now you have made it into the semifinals. You are one series away from going to the final match in Madrid. What does this mean for you as a team?
It's really, really important for us. We've been through all this struggle, and it was never like an easy road. So I just think that my players deserve it a lot from the way they have fought like through the whole Challenger series and the LCS. And yeah, whatever happens today, we are just really happy to be playing here and yeah, in front of the crowd, and it's just amazing.
Well said, and you know, you've definitely got quite a number of fans in that crowd behind you there. So also now over to you, Inner Flame. I want to ask you guys about prepping for these Unicorns, because the last time you guys met, it was back in week 6. The Unicorns did beat you guys, and how do you think since then you've taken a look at the way that they've played the game, the way that they've changed, and how you're preparing for them?
So like the reason we lost last time was generally because we were in like a pretty big slump. But I'm not like discrediting them, but I think like it contributed as well, like heavily. I think we're ready for whatever they can throw at us today. I think if they like choose something abstract, then they allow us to play what we want, and I don't think anyone wants to do that.
Leviathan called it Gouda. Maybe it'll be a different variety of cheese this time around. Sheepy, how about SK Gaming? You guys played them back in week 6. You managed to get the best of them. How do you think they've changed as a team since then? Admittedly, you know, there was a slump, but now things have definitely changed. They've ended out on the top. How do you prepare for that?
Usually we just take it as any other best of 5 series. We try to look what they are playing and understanding the enemy is the same as understanding yourself. At some point, we just do the normal schedule, best of 5 training, and then we just look out if they play anything specifically which we want to counter. And it's, I think with SK, relatively hard and easy because they are really good at what they play, but it's relatively hard to counter as well because they're just playing a strong game from what we see. So we try to see whose muscles are stronger and who can strengthen up.
There we go. Some respect there. I like it. So, Inner Flame, you guys, you've had a couple weeks off. You've been prepping. I'm sure you've been watching the way the Unicorns played off against Gambit. Anything particular you've been preparing for with regards to that in the time you've had extra?
I don't think you can prepare like specifically for anything without like being leaked something or whatever. But I think it's more about preparing for the like play style that they want to do. Like a lot of follow-up of a kind of like Syndra stun or like a Thresh burning. So they usually like pick around, like to just make picks all over the map, and like they don't hesitate, which is like what's really good about them. Is like if one person lands a hook, they'll all like go. They won't even like think, they'll just go. So it's like kind of hard to, yeah, sorry, it's kind of hard to prepare for generally, but yeah, I mean we're more ready for the play style than the actual like champions they're going to pick, because I don't think anyone would have seen like a Shake or
I don't think so indeed, but well, maybe we'll be seeing that. Maybe we'll be seeing something different. Once again, gentlemen, thank you very much. Best of luck in your match today. You guys can go ahead and join your teams. And now we're going to go ahead and send it back to the analyst desk once again for a little bit of extra discussion before we get into the games.
Thank you very much, Pyra. We're working on a small technical issue on stage, but it shouldn't be long until we get into the game, so we can talk a little bit more and preview this match, as for what the coaches said as well. And it was very similar when Pyra asked the question about the picks. Inner Flame said, oh, well, everything they have prepared, which is very similar to what you ended up saying. And I feel like that's the right way to go, because in the end, you can't prepare anyway.
Well, yeah, like we sat down and we pulled up the champions on the League of Legends client, the big list, and we sat down and talked for about 30-45 seconds. Okay, what is this champion? What lane does he go in, and how does he work with the style? And it helps a bit, but honestly, like when someone's ready to pull out a champion that you haven't seen before, play a style you haven't seen before, it's really going to challenge you to do the critical thinking on the fly. So we're going to have to see if SK is ready to adapt.
Yeah, as Jordan pointed out earlier today, Unicorns is a team that will force you to play their game. They don't play along the game that the opponents play. They force you to play their own. They go for the scrimmages. They go for those crazy teamfight situations where you usually don't expect them. And SK is a team that is calculated. SK goes into the game with a game plan. They know what they want to play. They know when they want to start. They know everything about how it's going to be. And if you're Unicorns and you're just going to throw a fist in the middle of their preparation, maybe you can throw them over.
I think Unicorns and Fnatic are kind of similar in that way that they press the go button and they go, but in my opinion, Fnatic can control it a little bit better and maybe turn it off when they shouldn't take a skirmish. I think that might be a risk for the Unicorns of Love in this one. If you go too far once versus SK Gaming, they are just going to tie it down and get the advantage of that.
But we had similar situations in the game series against Gambit Gaming. There were situations where Gambit clearly didn't want to fight, and still Unicorns somehow managed, whether it be with a teleport, whether it be with a support who comes from the flank. They have those situations where they just force you to fight. Just remember the quarter kill of Orianna. That was the game-changing and almost a serious-changing moment in that fight.
Yep.
You didn't want to take that fight, and still Unicorns managed to do it by brute force. And SK is a team that is not safe for that.
Right. And I think one of the things that you'll look at with teams is they'll line up the map, they'll look at the objectives, call the next objective, and then they'll try to find opportunities to fight. Unicorns Love will just fight any time. They see an opportunity, they'll just go. It doesn't matter if Dragon's up in a minute, 2 minutes, if the tower, they need to rotate to a tower. No, they see a guy walking out and out of position, they'll just go. So it's really difficult to play against because you always have to be on your toes. You know, every second, am I walking over a ward? Am I walking somewhere I shouldn't? Because they're just ready to jump on you.
Yeah, and they thrive on chaos, and it's quite the opposite for SK Gaming. They thrive on that calculated game. I'm happy you mentioned that, of course, those 4 kills that Unicorns of Love ended up getting in the bottom lane, which, of course, you can't foresee that it will end up being a quadra kill for Orianna in the mid game. It might as well just been a double kill. Let's talk about maybe Power of Evil a little bit. We haven't touched on him, and we have touched on Fox. Inconsistency was the name of the game for the Unicorns of Love in this split, and a lot of that hinged on how Power of Evil does or doesn't do.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the wins that Unicorns of Love had, whenever they won a game, Power of Evil was the one carrying them. Power of Evil was the one having a huge impact on his lane. He was the one getting the lead, the gold lead against his opponent in the mid lane. And then he just snowballed off of that, getting kills, making picks, putting out huge amounts of damage in the team fights. Whenever they lost the game, Power didn't have the impact that he maybe should have had. So this game series will actually be a lot about Power of Evil, because if he's ready to lead his team into the battle, then it can go either way.
Yeah, the Unicorns of Love have, I think I've said this before, a few win conditions, and one of the win conditions is Power of Evil setting up pickoffs. They like to play around dragons, and Vizicachi is really good at winning the team the dragon fights. But if dragon's not up, it's Power of Evil, sitting in a pink warded brush, hunting around the map, looking to pick someone off. And when he gets on those champions like LeBlanc, and we've seen him play tons of Orianna games, it's really up to him. He controls the pace of the game. When he's on, he's a monster, and I really hope to see him show up this series.
Yeah, and actually wanted to touch on that as well. We saw him playing the Kog'Maw versus you guys, and of course we know he loves this Casio. I still love to see Power of Evil on champions like a Syndra, like a LeBlanc, and just go in and go ham immediately. Why do you think he strayed away from that a couple of times? And as you say, he wants to control the game, but for a team as Unicorns, I don't think you should try and bank on going late game with an Orianna or a Kog'Maw, because your style is to get fights early.
The Orianna makes sense, and even the Kog'Maw in a slight regard. We played a lot of them in scrimmages, and they had games where they made the Kog'Maw mid work. But in the series against Gambit, and whenever they played it in LCS, it just didn't have the impact that you want to have from your mid laner, especially if it's a carry mid laner like Power of Evil. Today, I want to see him on that Cassiopeia if it's open. I want to see him on that Syndra if it's open. He's got the skills, he's got the mechanics to do it, he's got the knowledge to do it, and he just has to show it. Orianna, on the other hand, it's a damage control champion, but still a strong one for him.
Yeah, and I think it's just like the Kog'Maw and those styles of champions, are them just diversifying their play styles. I think it's smart, because if you end up in a spot where your pickoffs aren't working, your dragon control just isn't working, you can always fall back to playing a Kog'Maw type champion. But yeah, like Denta said, you want to see him on those at Syndra. You want to get that pickoff. You want to see him on personally, I want to see him on LeBlanc as well. Just those playmaking champions allow him to create the opportunities for his team. I think that's where they're going to be most successful.
Yeah, much like the mid lane matchup yesterday, it would be great to see both Fox and Power of Evil just go head-to-head in a very, very assassin-heavy matchup. Now, with all the speculation on how easily SK will be able to adapt to this best of 5, let's hear from the Unicorns of Love themselves on their signature meta-breaking style.
Well, since the start of my career, I always played what I thought is strong. I always had in the back of my mind that this can be strong if you have right conditions, right setups, and so I was always one that wasn't really afraid of trying to pull something out.
We just look for our champion strength, and then we actually wait for a perfect scenario to happen in the pick and ban phase where we can pick it.
Well, okay, that's a new one.
The man bear pick of Udyr has been locked in.
I was practicing Udyr, like spamming in solo queue, practicing in scrims, and it's really great versus like team comps that don't have sustained damage, and there's like a lot of tanks.
Do it! Do it! He's going in! Flash! Bear! Slap! Udyr is on the board!
Like, there is always a purpose of picks in the meta, so when we go for these off-meta picks, let's say for a Shaco, then we generally tend to go for a split pushing style. We just try it out in scrims, and if it works out, we are not afraid to even pick it into the LCS.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Shaco is locked in for the first time in 2015. The craziness is continuing.
I have like 150 games overall throughout the last season of Shaco games, and I know what it's strong against and what's strong with. I don't think just because we are one game away, we can't really afford on playing anything weird, because we really wanted to win the 4th game, and we are sure that with this champion select we can just go onto the semis.
In their debut split of the 2015 season, Unicorns advance to the top 4.
I think a lot of the teams are afraid, or maybe they just don't want to waste time on practicing something that might not work. But in our team, we take our time to test picks, theorycraft about this, like strategize. We have a lot of trust into each other with it.
Yeah, there is never really a thought that this won't work. So if Kiki says, I'm confident in playing Shaco right now, then we said, okay, let's go for it.
We trust into the person's idea, and we try to make the best out of it.
I trust in my teammates in their like picks, because they do the same like with me. I have my signature champions, and when we tried the Cassiori combination, they were really open to it, and it was really successful.
We did see Power of Evil get given the Omen of Death, and the Unicorns of Love come out with a fantastic team fight.
The meta is constantly changing, and it gives just new opportunities for other champions to rise as well.
I think it's still possible for us to surprise enemies, because there's always a way to find new stuff that's gonna work if we have the guts to do it. So, for example, versus SK, we still have some things we want to play against them and put them off guard. So, yeah, it's definitely achievable.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Trevor Quickshot Henry here with Martin Defisho Lunga. We are moments away from jumping into SK Gaming versus Unicorns of Love. We apologize about that technical delay. We're about to kick off this best of 5 picks and bans. We have no idea what to expect.
No, I mean, when Unicorns play, they can pull out everything. However, I do think we're going to see some changes compared to the Godmode game, where they ran these very slow scaling mid laners for Power of Evil. They can't do the same against SK Gaming. You need a strong mid laner here. I want to see Syndra, LeBlanc, so on from Power of Evil. And I want to see Kikis as well. Have a jungler that can fight against Svensson in the early stages. Otherwise, you simply lose that mid lane. Svensson gets to invade on you, and the entire thing just falls apart from the Unicorns of Love. So they have to change the fairly slow early game. We want to see some different champions from Power of Evil.
Well, we will see what Power of Evil and the rest of the Unicorns decide to lock in. This is, of course, the second semi-final. Teams are playing for a spot against Fnatic for a top of the table finish in the spring split. Syndra off the table from Power of Evil. Hecarim take away from Chachi, and Graves from Forgiven. Wasn't expecting a double 80 carry ban personally.
Well, it's been one of the strategies teams have used against SK Gaming. It's not because Forgiven can't play other 80 carries. It's because SK Gaming as a team has kind of struggled when they didn't have this lane bully for Forgiven, where he can be super strong in the early to mid game. What Unicorns are trying to do here is push him on that Caitlyn, where yes, he's going to have a fantastic early game, but his mid game is going to lack quite a lot of damage, and that's where the Unicorns can try and fight them. Meanwhile, I like the Syndra ban from SK. We just talked about how Power of Evil has to be able to play these early game mid laners. That was one of them. That's another one.
So Lulu taken as the final ban, removing Enrated's champion pool, considering SK banned out Annie as well. Unicorns of Love going to be sticking themselves to the IEM theory of how to beat SK Gaming. Cassiopeia locked in for Fox again to deny Power of Evil. All of the junglers in the world are available. All of the top lane tanks are available. And there's a number of options for both of these teams going forward.
I mean, we have seen Maokai a few times from Visichachi, but he's also a top laner who likes to pull out new things. The Smite teleport meta has now come to the top lane, and I'm sure he has certain champions prepared for it. Shyvana would be open in that situation. Otherwise, Morgana here for Hylissang, which was such a fantastic pick. obviously coming in from the Unicorns, and the Gragas, which we saw H2K play all 5 games yesterday in the jungle for Kikis. So not a strong duelist in the early game, but just fantastic in the team fights later on from this Gragas here, and all the CC you bring to your team.
Well, Hylissang earned himself that MVP of the quarterfinals thanks to his Dark Bindings early on. He's going to have a difficult task against Nami. Well, maybe not. Black Shield will be quite easy against Bubbles. Keep in mind, in rated 5-0 on this Nami and Freddy signature tank top lane.
So here's the thing about the Nami Morgana matchup. Morgana's Black Shield is about 22 seconds, if I remember 100% correctly, at rank 1. Bubble from Nami is 13 seconds. So you can bubble, force the Black Shield, and then you have a gap now of close to 10 seconds where you can bubble again, and there's no response from the Morgana pick. This also opens up for Caitlyn for Forgiven, which is one of the strongest 2v2 lanes you can get, forcing the Unicorns of Love into a lane swap. And then I have to keep that in mind with the next few picks. You cannot lock in a Poppy and then be forced into a lane swap. So this Sion makes a lot of sense in that case because he's so good in a 1v2 situation.
Well, we'll find out if Unicorns lock it in, and they do. Sion top lane Jinx for the AD carry and leaving themselves the option to counter pick that mid lane. Forgiven has run Caitlyn traditionally in the LCS, ran Tristana a couple of times as well when his Graves and Lucian were taken off the table. He does lock in the Tristana as a secondary option. SK have got a lot of scaling here.
They do, and it's another combo they have run before where they have Nami just to offer some early aggression in the laning phase where Tristana is very weak after her changes here. Obviously lost quite a lot of early damage, but still, with some scaling, she becomes still very strong, and she's fantastic at pushing down towers. And as you mentioned yourself, SK Gaming here, from mid lane, top lane, and AD carry, we're talking late game monsters in big team fights. And that's one of the changes we've seen from SK in the last week of the LCS. It's no longer just about 1-3-1 split pushing. This is way more team fight focused. They played Katarina in week 9 and they did the same. Yes, they were pushing early on to get that lead. Once they had it, they went in towards the mid lane and started team fighting as a unit around dragons, around buffs in the jungle. They're looking to do the same here once they scale up.
So SK Gaming got the team fight. Deficio, off air, we were talking about Cogmore in the middle lane. You said you didn't like it because Unicorns did not have a strong laning presence. Power of Evil has said to Svenskeren, I dare you to invade my jungle with that mid lane pick.
The reason I'm a little bit worried about this pick is because when they played it against Gambit, they fell behind in every single early game. What they did so well, however, was punish Gambit for making some very obvious mistakes, which allowed them to get to the late game point, at least to the level 11 point for Power of Evil, where he's gonna hit his massive power spike. What he's doing is always going tier into Luden's Echo. You hit level 11, you bind Elixir, you get a blue buff, and you just group with him and you just start sieging down. That happened, or could happen, because Gambit made mistakes early game that gave Unicorns of Love enough gold to hit that point and be strong enough. SK Gaming is a team who's shown multiple times, if you give them an early lead, they don't make the same mistakes. They don't allow you to get back in the game like Gambit did against the Unicorns. That's why I'm a little bit concerned. But because there's a Cassiopeia which is good in the laning phase, we're not talking LeBlanc who's going to one-shot you in that situation there. So I want to see what they're going to do, though.
Well, there's your team comps, guys. Hit us up for the first time today at LOL Esports. Hashtag SKWin if you are behind the #1 team from the regular split, or hashtag UOLWin if you think the pink power ponies will pop SK's bubble. And we are not seeing any of those unique picks straight out of the gates. We've had a lot of discussion between Dentist, Leviathan, and all the other casters off air about whether or not you pull out the Shaco, the Udyr in game 1, or whether you save it for later in the day. UOL have got a non-standard EU team composition. We don't see that AP Cog middle often at all.
Only from them,
Only
honestly.
from UOL.
And they played it, as we talked about in the quarterfinals, against Gambit quite a few times. Same setup with also the Jinx. And again, the whole objective here is don't really do anything before you hit level 11 for Power of Evil. You get rank 2 of your ulti, you get that Luden's Echo, and you start sieging up. All he has to do is land 2 ultis on one target, and that target is forced away from the tower, opens up for the Jinx to come in now and just melt these towers here in a matter of seconds. That's the whole goal here for the Unicorns of Love. And they're also trying to match SK Gaming in terms of late game scaling. If you look at them, 2 big tanks in the top lane, you got scaling mid laners, you got scaling AD carries. We might not be in for a very explosive early game, But once you start hitting the mid game, mid to late, that's where you're going to see the two teams start shining. One of them is going to be fantastic in all-in team fights from SK Gaming side. Unicorns is more about fast pushing and poking from distance.
Well, we'll see if Unicorns can hold off long enough for their scaling comp to switch on. They did make a number of mistakes against Gambit in the quarterfinal, and SK will punish them in a similar fashion.
They will, for sure. And we're going to see, because Tristana was locked in and not the Caitlyn, Unicorns of Love are okay taking the 2-2 lane. As we mentioned, Tristana is not the strongest in the early stages. You need to get that BF sword so you get some damage on your E, the explosive shot, which now, of course, scales with attack damage for her. And then, obviously, your goal as a Tristana is not to kill and fight early on. It's to get to the point where you, a bit like a Jinx, can get to a tower and you can take them down so far. So both teams here have 280 carries that will melt your objectives if they get the chance.
Yeah, and it's also, it plays into SK's style so heavily. If they can get themselves into position to push down towers, it works out well. It's going to be a little difficult against this Morgana Jinx. We do see that Forgiven and Enrated have returned to lane after doing Krugs, but Vardex and Hylissang were given a fair amount of time to push this wave up, so that race to level 2
first. One more minion here from Forgiven and he gets it.
For the record, Hylissang has landed his first binding of the game. If that continues, that's a good sign for Unicorns.
It's the exact same bottom lane they ran so often against Gambit, which honestly fell behind in terms of CS. Vardex was down compared to Pinoy in every single game they played. But then once they hit level 6, Hylissang would land a binding, he would all in with the Morgana, and they would get a kill because they have a super strong all-in between Jinx and Morgana at level 6. The CC from binding into trap into Morgana ulti is insane, and then you have that execute from the rocket of Jinx to finish off a target. So they're gonna wait for level 6 before we really see any action for them.
Well,
first gank here, we're expecting Svensson to be very active in the early game. He's not afraid of a Gragas on a Rek'Sai. That's a matchup he's gonna win, so he can look for these early ganks.
And it is what we were talking about in that mid lane. You're not scared of a Kog'Maw pre-6. You're not scared of a Kog'Maw when you've got that Cassio. Take a look at Sven. He wants to push his way down to this bottom lane. Flashes are available. We do see the Tremor Sense. Sven Scaren's come in. He's knocked up Hylissang, but Hylissang's flashed. Bubble has caught. Rocket jump in from Forgiven. Hylissang and Vardex in full retreat. They're looking for the kill, not gonna find it. His explosive charge does pop. Only the flash from Hylissang burned, but a lot of lane control garnered for SK Gaming.
And a very classic SK move if you look at the recent weeks for them. Svensson doesn't put too much attention on the top lane anymore. Freddy, he can handle himself. Now he's been playing Maokai quite a lot. You don't really want to invest too much into him. Instead, you see Svensson around the mid lane and the bottom lane, especially when they have a matchup that can snowball. Tristan and Nami here, if you start getting a lead, you can force these bubbles here. As we talked about how it's shorter cooldown than the Black Shield. So by giving Forgiven a great start, get him to that BF sword, he can start being a bit of a bully.
Great bubble, and that Black Shield's not going to help you from the charge. Vardex actually walks almost in range of Hylissang. A lot of damage being traded. Forgiven and Enrated stamping authority on this lane with the help of Sven Skeren. It has hurt him a tiny bit, but he's yet to back, still sitting on that Hunter's Machete. And this is a very late blue buff pickup, thanks to that early gank presence. That might throw off UOL if
they had a ward
they
though
were
to
thinking
see
anything. Thank you for that one.
Time. Again, you're not looking to invade Power of Evil. He's going to need a lot more levels before you really want to start fighting around it. And again, you have Gragas into a Rek'Sai. So Unicorns of Love will have the timer. We have to see if they want to use it for potentially a dragon. What you can do is when the second blue buff spawns in the game, you know the mid lane and jungle is going for it, then you instantly rush towards a dragon when they're stuck on the opposite side of the map. But that's all in the future, and again, the Unicorns not really looking to do a whole lot. The first few levels, you gotta get level 6 in your bottom lane, and you need a level 11 in your mid lane before we really start seeing some plays from them.
And we'll see if they can make their way there safely. Power of Evil farming up, already back to pick up that relatively early tier. Fox still farming away that middle lane, not pushing quite as heavily as maybe he could have, as he has decided to just back. You see Freddy jumping in on Chachi as Hylissang lands another Dark Binding. Needs a zap for his troubles, Ignite burning away. And Vardex is going to take a pop from that satchel charge. Good trade for Unicorns of Love in this bottom lane, but Enrated's got a full mana bar and will slowly be able to heal Forgiven back up.
And also with that early gank here, we see a difference in items from the 280 carries. Pickaxe for Forgiven, he got to push in the wave, had a CS lead as well, while Vardex was forced back and only got double thorn. Svenska now is in the top lane trying to force a flash.
And I think he's going to get it. Vizicachi, low mana, actually just walks straight out. Take a look at the river, though. You've got Gragas and Godmode coming up. That's level 6 with Living Artillery. We do see an instant flash away from Svenskeren as Vizicachi's now joining the fight. Freddy does have access to that Maelstrom, is going to pop it down. Forced a flash in reply. And all of a sudden, Power of Evil burns Ghost for 2 flashes from SK.
Let's just talk about what happened here, because Svenskeren decided to gank the top lane while his own mid laner was back in base, getting that tier here. Power of Evil went back earlier, so once he returned to lane, there was nobody there to help or to do anything against him. So he pushed out the wave and started roaming when he saw the gank, and there was no response from SK in that case.
Oh, Binding connects. It's going to follow into the Flame Chompers, and we do see Forgiven actually hopping forward. Ignite is burning away on Vardex as he's forced to flash and heal away. And this is just an action-packed bottom lane that Forgiven and Enrated have maintained control since that first game.
I remember every single time they trade, Nami has a heal, Morgana does not. So the sustain is in favor of SK Gaming whenever they trade. There's no mana on him now. He's gonna have to wait a little bit before he can throw out another one. But you see how every time they trade, Forgiven gets back some HP, can go in for another one. I like the other move from Unicorns before, timing the back of SK Gaming's players. He's saying, okay, there's no mid lane at the moment. We can roam and counter gank up here. And obviously Svenskeren shouldn't have gone for the gank in the first place if he knew there was no response from his own mid laner.
Well, we got to give some praise to Unicorns. There was so much pressure on their shoulders to survive through the laning phase. It's still early days, only 8 minutes on the clock, but they're keeping relevant in CS. They've responded to Svenskeren's ganks despite the weaker lanes, but they need to keep this up, and it's a difficult scenario.
Also just, honestly, slower scaling champions from SK than what we normally see. It's normally assassins in the mid lane, it's a lane bully in the bottom lane. And that's where you can't pick that slow scaling come from Unicorns of Love, but because they saw what SK Gaming were picking here, they could still go for their tried and tested style themselves. Didn't have to worry too much about SK just rolling over them in the laning phase. As you can see, it's been a bit of a farm phase. Only in the bottom lane is a big difference. And that's also due to the gank from Svenskeren, but also Nami being a fantastic laner.
Well, Forgiven manages to just hop away from that Dark Binding from Hylissang, as we do see Kikis making his way towards this bottom lane. It looks like he's going to come in for a gank. His body slammed over. That's a flash barrel. Forgiven is going to flash away from that Dark Binding. Continues to get chased down. Less than 100 HP as Hylissang and Kikis will look for that last hit. Hylissang doesn't even go for the kill. Lets Kikis secure it. First blood to the Unicorns.
Very clear that Forgiven wasn't ready for that one.
Vizicachi ran into a crab, I think. Oh, and the Dark Binding connects onto Enrated. We do see the Super Mega Death Rocket into the giant smiley face. Kikis is looking for another one. Decides to back away. And look at that. Vizicachi, the unstoppable onslaught. I'm pretty confident he hit that Scuttle Crab. Was trying to set something up middle, didn't work out. But Unicorns, first kill.
Bottom lane gank here, Kikis, he jumps into the bush and he doesn't wait, just throws the ulti instantly here, knocks back Forgiven. Such a nice setup and no reaction in time from SK Gaming. Super important first blood for them, because now, items, tables turned here. Jinx got to go back, afford a BF sword, only had the Dawn's Blade from the first one. And Forgiven, not even close. Average blade and longsword. Suddenly now the all-in potential of Vardex and Hylissang is going to be insane. And SK Gaming has to be careful in this bottom lane, 2v2.
Well, we'll see what they can do. I just got confirmation from our observers. Chachi was in fact running away from a gank down the river to safety. Not forced to burn that flash. So thank you for that update, guys. Take a quick second to look at the itemization. Kikis working his way towards the Cinder Hulk, of course. Tia still stacking for Power of Evil. You touched on the BF sword and the impact that Vardex will have against Forgiven, but look at the damage onto this tower. Forgiven gonna back away, Satchel Charge chunks it down, and truthfully, Hylissang and Vardex have been defending their objective for the entire 10 minutes.
There's no summoners now in the bottom lane for SK Gaming. Kikis should return down here. You know Hylissang has such a high success rate on his bindings here. Aim to land one and then just all in with the jungle as well. Get that kill, go straight to the dragon, and suddenly you secure an early objective. SK Gaming knows this can happen, and they're trying to react before anything goes on here. So Freddy has walked all the way down from the top lane There's TP in just a few seconds for Vizicachi here. He can push in the wave first and then TP if needed.
Well, take a look at those ward differences. As you can see, SK clearing out. Svenskeren significantly lower wards. And we'll see whether or not this lack of vision comes to hurt SK. They've rushed the Dragon down so quickly. It is secured by Kickis. He throws in the barrel of the smite and picks up Dragon number 1. Now Fox, he failed flashes. He face plants and Chachi drops him down with the help of Power of Evil. Now SK are scattering to the wind. Unicorns of Love are trying to grab control of this series. Freddy is going to get chopped down by the Lumberjack, and the rest of the Unicorns, as Svenskeren are forgiven, are trying to back away. 3 kills, a Dragon, and 1,000 gold. This is exactly what the ponies wanted.
Couldn't wish for a better start. Vizicachi here, not really feeling too much in trouble. Gets to back away as well. So the Unicorns kills Dragon as well for Kikis here. That was a Dragon started by SK. Freddy walked all the way from the top lane down just to take that Dragon here and back away before Unicorns could pull off any ganks that could then lead to a potential objective after. Completely backfire. Kills for Valex, kills for Power of Evil. That's the important one here. Wait for that Luden's Echo. Wait for his rank 2 ulti. And then you're gonna see Unicorn start grouping and really be annoying. So let's see it again. Ulti in. And he gets it for himself. Sadly for SK, some missed flashes as well.
Heartbreaking.
And then you get a Sign ulti in your face.
Well, you're not going to miss when you throw it down from that close. Still a lot of damage onto Unicorns, you can't deny that. Had the engage been slightly less favorable, maybe it could have been different, but all praise to Unicorns. They responded, they rushed into the Dragon, and that teleport 1 second later, you never know, you never know.
Well, good reaction time at least. That's what we got to give them. Not really any reason to figure what could have happened. We saw here from the Unicorns exactly what happened, and it was good for them. Good reaction. Chachi on this Sign. I mean, Sign into Maokai. It's not the most exciting lane in the world.
Well, a lot of faith
in
favor of the Unicorns of Love. A little bit of a lane gank. That was a flash away from Freddy. Scared of the barrel. Summon a spell blown. But Unicorns, definitely their playstyle is pulling so many fans. And you know, one thing we're going to touch on, SK Gaming during the regular split went 15-3. The only teams they lost to was Fnatic in the finals, H2K in the semi-final, who dropped to Fnatic, and the Unicorns. And as it stands, Unicorns have put up a very strong fight against a slightly different flavor of SK. We're not seeing the same.
That's safe to say.
Yeah.
Safe to say from SK. It's not the same lane bully style we have seen before from them. But
and it's not a massive lead either.
This is only game 1 for them, and it is also a chance for SK to see if they can pull off one of these compositions here. Kick is ready to steal more things away from Svenskeren. Might even try and look for a fight.
Well, Dark Binding does not connect. Svenskeren still trying to sniff around. As we see first item completed here for Power of Evil after the tier. Luden's Echo. Fox has also had that Archangel Staff stacking up for a little while. 450 mana.
Wait for level 11.
400 for Power of Evil. He has just hit power level 11 there, Deficio. And let's see how Unicorns decide to play this. Unicorns have not put any pressure on SK's towers. They've been content to sit back and farm. But you have to feel with the way the game is playing, they might be feeling more confident to make aggressive plays.
Well, the thing is, now that they've managed to get back in the bottom lane, they don't necessarily have to go for a group in the mid lane because they can contest 2v2, and they know if Binding connects, they can get a kill in this bottom lane as well. So that can stop them from at least grouping. Had they still been losing the lane, they would already grouped in the mid lane by now and start pushing down a tower for themselves. And this build from Power of Evil, it's very risky because it relies on you using your mid-game spike now with this rank 2 ult with the Luden's Echo. It delays everything else in terms of the late game, where in terms of items you need, you're not going to get, let's say, an Athene, so you're not going to have that extra mana regen. So you need to connect your ultis, otherwise you're just simply going to run out of mana and not do anything. So the spike mid-game with Luden's Echo Rush is super important to use. Otherwise you fall off compared to, let's say, tier into Athenes, into Seraphine's Praise, and so on.
Well, let's find out how this jungle interaction goes. Kikis and Svenskeren trading damage is relatively even thus far, but Kikis was forced to use that explosive charge, pop down the barrel, and actually is able to just waddle his way out. So he does get out safely, but blue buff will be secured. Kickers had actually been sniffing around for a little while on that objective. Equally as important on Fox's Cassio. However, of course, Cassio's going to get that extra cooldown spam.
Like this ward here, you can TP to it if you manage to connect the binding from Chachi. There's one on Enrated.
There's the TP. Here comes Vizichachi. Enrated throws down the tidal wave, but it's not going to be enough. No support yet from Vizichachi. This turns it into a 3-on-2. Freddy is in the back line, but here comes Svenskeren. No available support from the rest of the Unicorns. 3-on-3 as they trade kills back and forth. The fadeaway rocket secures a kill as now Chachi and Vardax are trying to chop down Svenskeren and Freddy. It ends up being a 1-for-2 trade, and Freddy's still sticking around. Defensive Void Rush from Svenskeren as Kikis was shoving down the top lane. What more can the Unicorns get? They won the fight, and they're going to put pressure on the tower as well.
Yeah, they get a lot of damage in the tower here. Will most likely be able to take it if they stay around for another wave. Seems like they don't want to be too greedy, though, and just backs away from this one. The wave is also fairly far away, but this is why they're keeping the lanes going and don't group with this fed power beetle or fairly fed power beetle in the mid lane, because they know land one binding, you can all in. They even had the teleport coming in on that ward, and it paid off. Those 2 kills more. Vardax, despite losing in CS like he did against Gambit, he picks up all the early kills on this Jinx, and that helps him get to his late game point a lot faster, despite losing in farm.
Vardax 3-0-1, sitting on around 2,000 gold, is about to shop. Picks himself up that Infinity Edge and Berserker's Greaves. Unfortunately, by sticking around and being frustrated by Freddy, it allows SK to secure an uncontested dragon. You could see that Vardax and Vizichachi were trying to back. They didn't get their opportunity, and Svenskeren instantly kills that ward. So here's a replay of the fight.
Notice the TP timing. As soon as the binding has been thrown by Hillesang, he communicates to Vizichachi saying, I'm gonna land it, TP now. So it comes in even before it connects, and that's 100% kill even without the TP. But then you stay around for the fight. They respect the fact that Freddy can teleport down as well. Meanwhile, look down at you, Pip. That's the grouping we talk about, how you get to that tower here. You land a bit of poke, and then the Jinx is just gonna melt the tower on her Unforgiven. Also going down in the very end. Nice little ulti from Vardax.
Really well played from Vardax indeed. Firing off that death rocket after being hit by the buster shot, no less. Quite a dramatic effect. So Unicorns, they get themselves their first tower of the game. SK also secured that bottom turret thanks to all of the build-up for the first 10 minutes. Don't forget that. And we return ourselves to this lane setup, even on CS, relatively even on items. However, Forgiven has had that Avarice Blade for a little while longer. Earned himself around 350 bonus gold. It's going to accelerate him to that second item spike. And let's see how Unicorns decide to play out these lanes if they want to keep evening or trading towers.
We saw the focus on outer turrets from the Unicorns beforehand. By them staying and pushing the wave into the tower and getting at least 50% on it, yes, they gave up the dragon, but they don't care about that one now because it's 1-to-1 anyway. They care about getting out these outer turrets so they can start sieging on the tier 2 ones. It's a lot easier to ward your flanks the further you get into the enemy territory, because then you just ward the entrance to the jungle instead of the entire river being warded up at the tier 1. So let's say you're grouping on the mid lane. So for them here, the value in getting an outer turret was higher than taking a dragon, and that's why they stayed after getting those kills beforehand, and now they got their bottom lane outer turret. Power Beetle still looking insanely strong with the Luden's Echo. If I know him correctly, he's gonna aim for Death Cap and a Void Staff as the next few items, and all he's trying to do is simply buff up the damage of the Luden's Echo, and every time he connects on ulti, he's gonna take 30% of your HP. If you connect on the second one, you're forced back to base, and you cannot defend your own tower, and that's what he's aiming to do, simply by buffing up the Luden's Echo damage as much as possible. Which is different because he doesn't actually have the best AP scaling, so you don't need a death cap. It's just simply for as much damage on this one item.
Well, it has worked thus far. We've just broken the 20-minute mark in the first game of this series, and Unicorns, they're up in every metric except towers. More gold, except dragons rather. One extra tower. They're ahead in CS. Overall, and doing a very good job. We touched on how important it was going to be for Unicorns to show that with a standard comp, they could match SK's
Freddy
laning.
needs to be careful here. It's very obvious the Unicorns will go for that top lane now with the last outer turret. and Raider was on the bottom side. Not sure what he was aiming to do there, but it does mean he's very late for this, and the Unicorns can go 5 versus 1.
Well, it looks like the focus is the tower for until that Dark Binding hits. The Mega Death Rocket comes out. The Power of Evil secures the kill. Sven Skeren, you've gone in without any help. That's a double kill to Power of Evil. The bubble falls short because of the Petrifying Gaze, and Sven, you were on the wrong side of that team fight.
SK Gaming is reacting very poorly here to what's gonna happen next. And Raid showing himself on the bottom lane, at least walking down there, not even being close to the top side of the map. A wave had already been built up, and it was the last outer turret. You know the Unicorns want a group right now. You know they want to push down your towers. Try and read the minion waves and get up there in time, or leave it. Don't have Freddy stay on the tower on his own. There's nothing he could do. He has to back away, or you need to have 5 guys there ready to try and defend it if you want him to stay at least, and they were not. They were split out on the map from SK. Unicorns of Love are doing everything correct at the moment, and they're getting all the towers down.
And just like that, the lead grows to 5,000 gold at 21 minutes and a 3-tower advantage. Unicorns of Love punishing Freddy for a trademark greedy style of play. How many times this split have we said Freddy shouldn't really be there, Freddy shouldn't really be in lane or pushing that, or defending that tower? It's something that has cost Freddy in the past, but has not always resulted in game losses. Let's also keep that in mind. But admittedly, 5k cold down and a completed Leandri's Torment from Power of Evil.
Okay.
If there was any more indication that you wanted to poke high health targets and secure safe objectives, that item screams it.
It's pretty good if you build a Rylai's as well, because then the slow will give you the double damage on the Leandri's proc, which is very effective. Now you're gonna have to rely on them either walking in your E, or you need to have a slow connect from maybe Kikis here if you wanted to get the double damage. So we're gonna have to see if he goes for Rylai's later on here for Power of Evil, otherwise it's not gonna be the most effective one. If you also consider the fact that only Freddy is gonna get an insane amount of HP. It is still, as you said yourself, this is purely, first of all, it's Snowball with the magic penetration, and then it's just poking out targets. You don't need to kill them, you just need to force them back to base so you can take an objective.
And something else you gotta remember, as long as Hilisan continues to play like a sniper, it makes Power of Evil's ultimate so much easier to land. Take a look at this. Aggressive play into Sven Skeren. The charge goes backwards. Sven forced to tunnel to safety. The Death Rocket gets interrupted as Fox throws down the Petrifying Gaze. Now Unicorns are split. This could be bad for them. Kikis is zoning away 3 members of SK in the background. Hylissang has gone down. Boom! Here comes Chachi. He curves the bullet, spins around a corner, and is now taking up 3. Pops the shield to pop Sven Skeren. Here comes Power of Evil. He's low on mana, but blue buff is ticking away. Visit Chachi, roars of the Slayer, and he's going to slam down the decimating smash. Not quickly enough as Power of Evil secures the kill. It is a 3 for 2, but a slightly risky fight from the Unicorns of Love.
A little bit being caught in the jungle. I think it's safe to say SK Gaming were ready for that one. For giving Gun himself a kill, will try and take a tower as he knows the Unicorns are going to go for this dragon here. At least try and trade it. Oh, and raid it. He's in problems.
I think
yeah.
Well, if Godmode was going to eat anybody, he's going to eat the walking sushi. Now he's setting sights on Forgiven. That's a big hit, but watch the mana pool. Misses the second shots, and Forgiven's going to get away. I thought Power of Evil could have landed a few more shots. But here's a replay of that team fight.
Yeah, so let's see it again. It is the Unicorns of Love. They're looking to fight here. Visit Chachi at the moment is pretty far away from the rest of the team, so they try and go for a pick on Sven. There's a nice ulti from the Cassiopeia onto Vardax. That's the important one. Power of Evil joining now, hasn't managed to land a lot of poke before the fight even started, and now Unicorns are split up. The tanks are not there at first, Vishichachi's coming now, and Kikis is down here on the bottom side, holding off 3 guys, so there's nobody to stop Forgiven, but this is such a good ulti from Vishichachi. The guy got a double kill against Gambit as well. This guy on Sion. This guy on Sion.
Made you make some noises I've never heard before to Fish.
Super awesome to watch. And we just see the damage from Power of Evil. I mean, when you rush this Luden's Echo, it gives you so much burst.
And he's making
just
that
also
burst
makes
count.
you extremely squishy if you do get caught out.
Well, luckily for Unicorns, he's not been caught yet. 6-0-1. Vardags on Jinx, 3-0-5. Phantom Dancer completed. Tanks are getting tankier, and DPS is getting more DPS here. As Unicorns of Love maintain that 5,000 gold lead. The inner turret is available, and the minion wave is about to conga line down. TP is available for both top laners. You can see Freddy is starting to back, but this tower is not going to be long for this world. Vardags is melting it, and SK have opted to forgo.
And if we look at SK Gaming here, how are they going to start a fight against such a long-range poke machine that Power of Evil is at the moment? They only have either Flash Engage from a Maokai, but oh, wait, there's a Black Shield. That's going to stop that engage from happening. Then you're going to need some TP in behind and maybe a flash in from the Cassiopeia to break a potential Black Shield and get an engage. Otherwise, there's no way for you to start a fight. And SK banned Annie, not Morgana against Hylissang. And now this Morgana is stopping you from ever getting to Power of Evil and Vardags in the back line.
Look at the damage. It's just poking away. Power of Evil is hitting 2 out of every 3 of those living artilleries. Forgiven was low. Freddy ate a binding. Rated took some poke, but they did not get the inhibitor turret. Unicorns need to push out their side lanes and maybe set their sights on the bottom inner, as it's the last one remaining before knocking on those inhibitor steps.
One more level for Power of Evil, and he reaches the final form of I'm gonna be annoying and spit you in the face.
Implying that it hasn't been already?
Well, even more.
Even more, okay.
And you cannot engage because your only form is a Maokai jumping in onto a Black Shield, which is never gonna work. Then you need Svenskeren to have a tunnel behind the Unicorn so you can jump to and then like get in from the flank. That could maybe be a way for SK, but they gotta find a way of getting both Svenskeren and Freddy in at the same time on 2 different targets. Let's see what happens here. Chachi's down.
This is not going to end well. Chachi's in between 5. He will get taken out, but here comes a passive of Scion. Power of Evil hammering away with the artillery from the backline. They're going to trade top laners shortly. The Death Rocket secures the kill. Chachi for Freddy. What is more valuable? Kikis is about to get access to that cast. He's not going to get in range to use it though. And SK, they stall the game for a little while longer at the cost of Freddy's life. Kikis will start off this Baron. Let's see what sort of engage there is. Tidal Wave was used from Enrated. That's a very big tool, and Forgiven is not with his team. Hylissang waiting on the crab. He connects with the binding. The artilleries are out, and Power of Evil gets one more. Fox gets pinned against the wall, holding onto that petrifying gaze. He flashes forward. Hylissang looks away, doesn't get caught, but he will get dropped by the poison. Here comes Forgiven. Forgiven's got Vardags, and Power of Evil is in full retreat with low mana. SK Gaming have turned this fight on its head, and it's been long enough for Vizichachi to respawn and to teleport in. At the end of the day, 2 members of Unicorn still down, and SK are now considering the Baron. There's no mana. There's no mana for poke from Power of Evil. But Vizichachi is around.
Full XP Scion.
Low health Kikis. Here comes Scion. He misses this time round. Flashes forward. The smash doesn't really connect, but the Roar will slow a few on the retreat. Kikis is still very tanky. 1,000 HP is being melted away. Buster Shot plus Explosive may not be enough, and it's not. Now Power of Evil's flashing away. Somebody get me an oxygen tank. Decimating Smash gets charged up, and Chachi is retreating away. The fight of the ages. And Baron still left untouched. The rocket from downtown, no, that one went wide.
Went wide. We saw here for Power of Evil, this is why some players like their Athene's build, because then you can have these long fights, still get some mana back. He was completely out of mana, only sending 1 ulti, I believe, for the last half a minute here when they were fighting back and forth. But SK Gaming felt like they had to do something. Trying to force a Baron fight is a way of maybe splitting up Unicorns, maybe surprised him a little bit. Ended up, we can say it backfired, but then again it would have been the same if Unicorns had grouped on a tower, which is what they want to do. Unicorns don't need to start a Baron here. Go 5, go down to a tower, play that game. You don't need to risk putting your carries in a Baron pit where SK can't get to them.
I, for one, think that was quite a smart play from SK, despite the fact that it was sloppy and drawn out. Baron was not taken by either team. The inner turret in the bottom lane is still standing, and that gold lead becomes less and less as the game progresses, but as I'm busy praising the decision-making, Freddy finds himself really not in the right position, and all of a sudden, Unicorns 35 seconds without their opponent's tank. The cask is going to force the flash, and that means Enrated is really on the wrong side. Living Artillery is being spammed. He's dodged a few. He can't dodge the last. 2 members down, and all of a sudden, Unicorns of Love are knocking on the door. SK Gaming are forced to let them in. And the crowd erupts in chants. Unicorns with the first inhibitor of the second semi-final. They are showing up with the scaling comp. This bodes well if you're a Unicorns fan.
And as long as they stay out in the open where Power of Evil can sit and poke, with his long range, he has a Black Shield ready if needed. then there's not a whole lot SK Gaming can do to stop them. Base is open. SK once again is going to try and see if they can rush a Baron and try and force a fight potentially there. Or see if they can catch the Unicorns off guard. Vardex is going to do this Dragon while the rest of the Unicorns are trying to stop this one. Sven is already being poked down.
Kikis is looking for him.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel when they're standing in there. I mean, you just poke in with your ulti from Power of Evil. Over and over.
Until your mana runs out. Down to a third. Still no mana regen, despite having that Archangel Staff upgraded to the Seraph's Embrace.
That is a trade-off, as we mentioned a few times. You get more damage with this build, but you get less ultis to use, in that sense.
Luckily for Unicorns and Power, he's landed them.
Oh, I absolutely love this one from Power of Evil. Because the Unicorns are so good at using it, from level 11, they do group up, they do play around him. And in games like this, when there's not enough engagement from the other side and you get a lead, there's just nothing the other team can do against you. Unless you miss position and you allow them to get a flank on you, you should never be able to die if you're Power of Evil here.
And he has not. 9-0-2, still keeping track of Power of Evil's performance. You know, we were talking about this matchup. Forgiven, will he get sniped? Let's see. Shot after shot, he manages to get away. But to Fisher, you felt quite strongly that this series could be defined by Fox and Power of Evil's performances. Because when the respective mid laners do well, their teams do well. It enables their junglers, it enables the team's style to come out. And as it stands, Unicorns are rushing this Baron. Here comes SK. Freddy gets caught by a Dark Binding. Hylissang again. We did see the cast come up from Kikis. That was a little bit inopportune. Freddy's going to get chopped down first. The front line's away. Vardex manages to avoid the big stun of the Petrifying Gaze. He's going to get excited and force Unicorns back while Power of Evil snipes one more with the living artillery.
10-0. This guy,
if there was fantasy points, he would be extremely happy.
Yeah, when he gets a good start, he's shown so many times that he can just carry games for his team, and he's doing it here. Full credit to the rest of the members as well. I mean, when you have this Hylissang Morgana who lands the binding and you just gotta land the ulti from Power of Evil, that combo together is so good at creating picks.
Oh, Freddy got hurt again.
I just don't understand why teams value banning Annie over Morgana when it comes to Unicorns of Love. Because yes, Annie can start fights, but she doesn't have the same pick potential in this sense, where you land a binding and use that to poke down a target and force them away from a tower. Annie is way more about all-in engaging. That doesn't bode well with a poke composition from the Unicorns. So if you're afraid of this comp here, well, Morgana is one of the things you gotta take away.
Funny thing is, the only real poke in this comp is primarily on that Cogmore.
That's enough.
True, touche.
Then you got a little bit from the Jinx, and you got the execute in the end.
So, well played by Unicorns.
Which is all you need.
They've got a good mixture. This is a very, very smart team composition. Strong front line, strong disengage, strong pick. Feels like they can do a little bit of everything. And you've got all of that scaling AD damage from Jinx to back up if things go to the super late game. 34 minutes on the clock, 58,000 gold for Unicorns. Supers in 2 lanes, and they're going to take an uncontested tower. Sven Skaren, you've got to be very, very careful. Forced to flash to safety. Here comes the rest of the team. Fox is actually going to flash away. Chachi flashed for that one too. We do see Freddy doing battle with top laners in the back line. Let's see what Vardex can do. Where is his focus? Not on the tower yet. We do see a super mega Deathlocker dropping 2 members of SK super low. And that's going to allow the Unicorns to set themselves up. Fox is down. Hylissang did it again. Vardex and Power of Evil closing this one out. They're going to take the 3rd inhibitor. And they will continue the siege without the damage from Fox. There's not much chance. Forgiven's caught out. We do see the tidal wave being thrown to split up the Unicorns as Sven Skaren's in the middle of the fight, but he's doing nothing. We do see in the back line, Vardex gets excited, gets a 2nd, looking for a 3rd, is going to get the 3rd before being dropped by the explosive charge. Ladies and gentlemen, the audience is chanting. And they've done it. Game 1 in the best of 5 goes to the ponies.
Yeah, and just to make sure everyone understands here, we're not saying that Annie is bad for Hylissang. It's still a fantastic pick. We're not saying you can't use Annie in a pick composition. But in this type here, where it's about long-range snipes, the Morgana is just so important for Unicorns. Also, to prevent the engage. Because that Black Shield, when you're against a Maokai, that stops everything he can do to get onto your carries. He can only target one champion. It's a magic spell as well. When the Maokai goes in, and everything gets blocked by this Morgana.
Very big smiles from the Unicorns of Love, but Sheepy's face there is the most serious that I have seen all split long. He's out for blood, and that was a fantastic game. The one thing I want to highlight very quickly, something we haven't discussed just yet, Unicorns of Love will be playing Red Side in 4 of the 5 games.
Yeah.
They chose Red Side on matches 2 and matches 4, which was their choice. SK put them on Red Side on games 1 and 5. The reason I highlight that, Cogmore was last pick. Cogmore was the final champion locked in from the Unicorns of Love, and it carried 11-0-7.
And to make it worse, if that gets banned away, you don't know what new picks the Unicorns have prepared, which the thing often about these new picks does not matter. It's because there's either a lot of counters to it and you can only pick it into like specific comps. Now they get to see everything from SK and can decide, can we use it here or not? And then we're going to have to see if they lock it in as a last pick, which is why it's so good for them. Also, the first pick in this game was Cassiopeia, which is not a champion we normally see from SK Gaming because they like to be able to roam early on and they like to be able to pick people off quite a lot. You can't do that on the Cassiopeia. You're fantastic in team fights. You have a good laning phase, but you need to sit and farm up here and you need to go as a unit and get these fights in. This is not a champion we normally see from SK because of that. That was the first pick. It was a takeaway from the Unicorns of Love.
That's the important point, isn't it?
So
the fact that in their bans, Syndra, Hecarim, and Annie, so very targeted, taking away that Syndra from Power of Evil, which is the lane bully we were expecting. That is what we thought was going to happen. And then the first pick, Cassio, because again, you take Cassio, you remove the risk of Cassio Yorick, which Unicorns use to great effect. There are more problems for SK to solve in the pick ban phase.
This is one game, yeah.
Even in total, because of the fact Unicorns have Red Side in 3 of the next 4 games. I feel with Unicorns having the option to counterpick, it's more difficult for SK to pick ban.
Here's just the weird thing for me, because this is a comp that Unicorns ran a week ago against Gambit. SK sat at home, watched the games, and said, okay, we can see everything they're doing, we can see the way they're picking them, and yet they pick in that Maokai as the second one and leave Morgana open, even though they know that Unicorns don't care about you taking Maokai if Morgana is on the table already. And SK picked themselves into this. Didn't have an answer early game.
Keep in mind,
and as soon as they fell behind, no way of engaging.
We didn't expect it either. We had discussed off air, like, we kind of felt that if Unicorns were going to beat SK in a head-to-head, we were expecting stronger laners. We're expecting maybe to match SK's aggression.
If SK picked the strong lanes, yeah.
What was super smart from, I think, Unicorns is maybe recognizing that Cassio pick mid meant they could go for a scaling mid as well.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
So a lot of praise to them. You can see the team backstage actually chatting. And again, this is a very serious, very, very interesting team to watch because they went 9-9 in the regular split. There were so many people going, where does the cheese end? Where do these unique champions, these one-off picks stop? They didn't use them a lot in the regular split, let's be fair. And they didn't have the greatest of showings. But now in the playoffs, they're pulling out, the Cogmore against SK. They're pulling out the Udyr, the Shaco. And it has worked out.
Has worked out. It was only game 1. We're going to have to see what SK Gaming does now for the next one. I expect some new picks at least coming in from them.
Well, we'll find out what they do. But to break down this particular match and UOL's game 1 win, let's hand it back to Shocks, Dentist, and Leviathan at the analyst desk.
Thank you so much, Trevor. Wow, what a game 1 from the Unicorns of Love. Unlike the series, how they started it versus you guys in game 1, where they went standard and they lost really hard. This time, they went standard and they won incredibly hard. Let's talk a little bit about the team comps from both sides and also get a graphic to well exemplify that. A first lock in Cassiopeia for SK Gaming, throwing down the gauntlet in a very late game-oriented comp.
Absolutely. The Cassiopeia with a pick away from Power of Evil. Power of Evil is one of the 2 known Cassiopeia players in the European LCS. So it was on paper a good move to take away from him, but this scaling mid laner opened up, just like the Fisher said, the Kog'Maw as a last pick. Kog'Maw doesn't work in a team composition where you're facing an assassin, because the assassin can just go in on you. It's similar to when you play Kog'Maw as an AD carry. But in this case, Cassiopeia wasn't that big of a threat in the early game, so it opened up the late game scaling Kog'Maw, and he carried like incredible performance in Kog'Maw.
Yeah, and I'm actually really happy to see Kikis pull out the Gragas. They banned Gragas, I believe, 100% of the time against us in our series, which led us to believe that maybe Kikis hadn't practiced a champion, but give him a week and he managed to pick it up, and they executed it really well. It was the Gragas that was enabling them to set up pickoffs. We were seeing the Gragas barrel on this Svenskeren time after time. They're just really forcing SK to take the fights that UOL wants them to take. So it's a really good champion pickup for him, and they executed it really well.
Yeah, one thing that we also have to talk about is the fact that SK picked a scaling composition overall. Unicorns of Love denied Delusion in the Graves, so what was left was either the Caitlyn or the Tristana. That's what we usually see. Bidona didn't expect the Corki. If you pick a Tristana and the Cassiopeia, you want to go late game, and that opens up early game aggression for Unicorns of Love. And Unicorns of Love is a team that can definitely go aggressive in the early game, and they were just all over the place. Gragas making plays, getting that first blood with a beautiful play. It was just exactly what they had to do.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that the setup for the play was actually really beautiful. They were able to force the jump out of Forgiven just off of a Morgana binding, communicated to Kickus, hey, he has no jump for 20 seconds or whatever it is, come bottom, just ease over the wall, flash ultimates, and just set it up perfectly. It was exactly what they needed.
Glad you mentioned that Morgana binding, because if we didn't see it enough in the series versus you guys, Hylissang just continuing that MVP streak, also in the fight. What, did you?
Oh no, he's just a monster.
Yeah, he's a monster, really good. And let's pull a replay up on the screen from the minute that the Unicorns of Love had their advantage. They know how to push it.
Yeah, and this is just one of those situations where Unicorns of Love forces you to team fight. They make a pick in their jungle, group up all together, and then just force you to fight it. It started pretty good for SK. They were able to take a kill in this, but then just Unicorns countered with a favorable trade and the Drake right afterwards. So it was just one of those Unicorns moments.
Yeah, and the thing about this, I think, is either you have to give up your jungler if you're SK, you have to say, okay, well, Svenskeren just dead, and not take the fight and give up an objective, or you have to take the fight, a fight that, you know, you're not probably going to win because this is exactly what they want. It's a lose-lose situation based off of the setup from UOL.
And at that moment, actually, even though the Unicorns of Love was very ahead, the old fear crept in with me that we sometimes say for the Unicorns, they just go and they go hard even though when they shouldn't. But something that was so glaring in this one, skill shot wise, the power of evil ultimates, the Morgana bindings, the Gragas ultimates, even the Scion ultimates and hitting people, it was incredible across the board. Even Vardax with his fadeaway ultimates, they are just in the zone right now.
Absolutely, Vardax stepped up huge in this game. He was able to have a really good laning phase against the bot lane.
Forgiven and Rated.
Yeah, and Rated and Forgiven known to be the best bot lane in Europe, and they was just having a clutch game in the bot lane. Vardax, I don't know why you give him Morgana. Like the Annie ban, maybe they expected that the bot lane gets banned out and that he prefers the Annie by now, but if you leave that thing open, he's gonna lock it in and he's gonna perform. Like you can't give him Morgana.
A lady. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and like they have the patience, like they know what they need to do. Like they just wait for the binding, wait for something to hit, and then they all go in. They have the patience. They've played this comp before, and they play it really, really well. Like you can say Unicorns of Love are the cheese team, but they played a magnificent standard game. It was really well executed.
Yeah, it was beautiful to watch. So now you're SK Gaming. You're going into Game 2. You know that the Unicorns of Love, if it goes to 5, they have 3 more red side games. How will that influence your mindset going into the next one?
Absolutely. It's all about mindset now. If you're SK and you're going into the game against Unicorns of Love, with the strong characters that they have, they expect it to go 3-0. At least that's what I'm thinking. So if they lose the first game, now it's all about the staff. They have to stabilize their mentality and they have to make sure, okay, we lost the first one, but there are 4 other ones, potentially. So they have to be on top of the game. And, like, please don't tilt, please.
Yeah, this is going to be a real test for Forgiven. He claims he's one of the best. Well, it's time to see if he's one of the best at mental fortitude. I know N-rated pretty well, and when he gets angry, he tends to step up his play rather than step down. So I expect to see a strong performance out of N-rated in this next game, but it's really going to come down to Forgiven. You know, he has the mechanics. He claims he's one of the best. Well, can you hold it together after dropping an early game to Unicorns?
We will see. Don't make N-rated angry. You won't like him when he's angry. And in just a few minutes, SK Gaming will try and even out the score against the Unicorns of Love. We'll be back covering all the action in just 3.5. Don't go anywhere.
How about the magic trick?
Play Shaco?
I would end this burden, but it always returns.
Dude, that's so Maokai.
Looks like he's going to come in for a gank. His body slammed over. That's a flash barrel. Forgiven is going to flash away from that Dark Binding. Continues to get chased down. Less than 100 HP as Hylissang and Kickus will look for that last hit. This lack of vision comes to hurt SK. They've rushed the dragon down so quickly. It is secured by Kickus. He throws in the barrel of the smite and picks up dragon number 1. He failed flashes.
Finding from Chachi. There's one on N-rated.
There's the TP. Here comes Vizichachi. N-rated throws down the tidal wave, but it's not going to be enough.
I'm in. I knock him up.
I ulti.
Rek'Sai!
Yeah, I'm Rek'Sai. I sap.
He's dead. Nice. Get home.
I'm in. SK in the background. Hillisang has gone down. Here comes Chachi. He curves the bullet, spins around a corner, and is now tanking up 3. Pops the shield to pop Sven Skerrit. Power of Evil hammering away with the artillery from the backline. They're going to trade top laner shortly. The Death Rocket secures the kill. Buster Shot plus Explosive may not be enough, and it's not. Now Power of Evil's flashing away. Somebody get me an oxygen tank.
Go, boys!
And they've done it. Game 1 of the best of 5 goes to the Ponies.